Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel. I own and operate Turn of the Century Antiques out here in Denver, Colorado, which is also home of the Virtual Doll Convention. Today's a fun day here at the doll shop. I'm so glad you're here with us. We have a nice calm day. It's raining outside. Christopher's on vacation and Paul and I are here. We have caught up on all of our shipping and we thought it would be fun to film a couple videos that talk about antique dolls and antique doll collecting. It's been a while since I've done these type of videos, and believe me, there's so many videos swirling around in my head that I want to do, but it's also like, Rachel, you just got to sit down and do them. So that's what we're doing right now. We're going to sit down and do some videos. If you are an advanced collector, you will probably enjoy this just because we're going to be looking at dolls, but this is for newbies. I remember when I first started in dolls, and I have a lifetime of experience. Am I an expert? By all means, no. I am always learning. I get it wrong a lot. I have to look up things all the time. But I remember when I first started in this more on a professional level, and especially when I didn't have our mother, and when I say our, my brother's filming, so our mother who started this doll shop and left it to us so we could have a wonderful job and something to do with our days, which we are so grateful. But when I started doing this, and especially when I didn't have her to lean on to know everything, it at times was of course very confusing. Sometimes you just didn't know one thing from the other, and I think that one thing that I can offer that is going to be very valuable, especially if you're new to collecting, are some basics. So we have a huge doll shop here. It is full of dolls, and one thing that I know we can talk about is basics. So in this video, we're going to go over some basics, and what we're going to talk about for basics first to start, and we'll see how long we can go and how much content this creates before we start our next video. We're going to talk about what dolls are made out of. Hopefully we find, I can't imagine we're not going to find an example of pretty much everything here of what dolls are made out of, and we're going to talk about that. Knowing what a doll is made out of is the first step in learning all that you can, but also the first step in identification. If you're trying to identify a doll, or if you are trying to describe a doll, or if you are trying to do anything with dolls, it's really good to know what it's made out of. So we're going to go over a couple of just the bare bone basics of what dolls are made out of, and just common dolls and doll terms that you might find in the course of your collecting and in your life. So don't be afraid to learn and to ask questions. If you meet somebody that's really mean to you about just asking a basic question and act like that you should already know it, don't pay attention to that and don't let it steal your thunder. Sometimes in life we can have these interactions, and I have been on both sides of the interactions with everything, and you know, you live and learn and you evolve. But don't let not knowing everything, or if you say something and you're wrong about it, stop you from continuing to enjoy collecting. Sometimes we have those moments and it just takes all the wind out from underneath our sails and we just stop. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. So surround yourself with people that love and enjoy the hobby and want what's best for you. And you can always find that here, of course, on my channel and on the Virtual Doll Convention and at our store here. We just love dolls. We are not snobs when it comes to dolls. We are not elitists when it comes to dolls. All dolls are welcome. All dolls are fun, and we love to learn and enjoy dolls. So that's the rule here. It's just kindness and enjoying dolls. So I hope that you enjoy, and let's hang out for a bit. So some of the earliest dolls in the world were made of stone. There's one that was like shaped like this, and it's like a very curvaceous lady, and it was a stone doll, and I think that's the world's earliest known doll. But for our purposes, we're gonna kind of start where dolls were considered playthings and made to be child's dolls, child's and adult dolls, for adults. Because a lot of adults, pretty much everyone watching for the most part, unless you're getting into dolls and you're younger, for the most part, we are adult doll collectors. And it's so fun to be in this world. I could go off on a tangent, but I'm not going to. I'm going to try and stay on course about what we're talking about. But my tangent is how fun it is to collect and be in the doll community. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. So if you're new here, you're going to meet and do so many things in your life if you start to collect dolls. But some of the earliest dolls, now that we're going to get back on subject, are wood dolls. So those are some of the earliest ones that that you're going to find if you want to start looking at early wooden dolls. And oh my gosh, they are fascinating. They are amazing. They are incredible. I love everything about early wooden dolls. The really good rare ones with the giant hands and the articulation and the big heads, they are very extremely expensive for good reason. They are very, very, very rare, and I absolutely love them. So wood dolls are a really fun doll to collect, especially if you want to start really early doll collecting. You can tell a wooden doll pretty much by looking at it and noticing the characteristics of it that actually look like wood and carved wood. Sometimes if you look inside the joints, you can see the actual wood, and so that helps a lot when trying to identify one. But we have one right here, and this is a little peddler. And when you look close, hopefully, Paul, you can get in there and see. It's kind of hard to tell, but she is made out of wood. So most of the earliest wood dolls were carved in areas of Germany and Austria. And they were carved from turning wood or carved wood, and they were produced, a lot of them were produced in England from 1700 to about 1900. This one right here is a very common doll. This is the kind of a lot of the wooden dolls that you will typically see. Let's see if we can pull out her little arm. There. You can see that it is wood. That is painted wood. And the peddler dolls are really fun. These, you will see these a lot. Some peddler dolls are, the bigger the basket, the more expensive they are, the more stuff they are peddling for sale. And they have their little basket of wares in front of them, and they are so much fun. But a lot of them look like this, some of the later ones. But my favorite wood dolls are Lord and Lady Clapham in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. We did some videos with them back in my Ruby Lane days, and you can see those. But Google Lord and Lady Clapham, and you'll see some amazing, amazing dolls. And if you're ever over there in England, then you got to see them. But that is a wooden doll. Here's another great example of a wooden doll. This is a Mason Taylor doll, and they were made in Springfield, Illinois. And you can see all of the wooden joints and all of the wonderful wooden features of this doll. Show and hut dolls are actually made out of wood too. Those are a very, very, very popular doll. If you've never heard of show and huts, then Google those. So there's some great videos on YouTube about show and hut dolls, but they're really fun. And wooden dolls are a wonderful type of doll to collect. You can collect a little bit of everything, but if you want to have a focus, sometimes your focus can be the material that your doll is made out of. Now, as we kind of go along, we'll do a video sort of on maybe identifying bodies, but when you're looking at bodies, especially for Bisque-headed dolls, if it's an antique and it has a wooden body, especially if it's like a fashion doll, that's a really good thing. So sometimes dolls are made out of, they'll have a bisque head with a wooden body. But right now we're talking about the heads, basically what the heads are made out of. Because sometimes dolls will have different materials for the heads, and then they'll have wooden bodies or composition bodies, and we'll talk about what composition is. But that is another good example of a wooden doll, and she has metal hands. Check that out. And feet. So what dolls are made out of is in itself a wonderful thing to study and to learn about. Now we're going to look at some wax dolls. Here's one more example of a Mason Taylor doll. I wanted to show this one because this beautiful doll is missing a lot of her paint, and you can see the wood underneath. So you can look at the turning marks where they were turning the wood and kind of sculpting the head in there, and you can see the characteristics of actual wood. So I hope that helps a little bit. Now I'm trying to go from oldest to newest. So next in the line is paper mache and wax, but I picked up a wax doll first. So we're going to look at a wax doll. Now this doll is so beautiful. I absolutely love wax dolls. Paul, don't get in too close, but let's look at this face. So wax dolls were very, very popular. They were used by doll makers from the 17th century to about the 20th century. There are three main types of wax dolls. The earliest dolls were made from solid wax, either carved or molded. And then there are poured wax dolls, which are some of the most expensive of the 19th century dolls, which means they were made in about the 1800s. And then there were some inexpensive wax over composition type dolls that were produced after about the 1900s. Now, solid wax dolls are my favorite. I really, really like the solid wax dolls. Yes, they can melt. Yes, if they get too close to a radiator or something, a lot of them met their demise in that way. But there is a luminosity and just a beautiful, beautiful essence about wax dolls. So let's see what this says. Set blonde human hair, English poured wax on label, stationary blue glass eyes. Interesting. I don't know who wrote that tag, but we've had her forever. She's not on our website. We should probably put her on there, but she's just wonderful. I love having her, and she's a beautiful wax doll. Here you can see right here. So wax is probably one of the more easier ones to determine because literally they look like a candle. They look like wax. If you know what a candle looks like, then you can see. Look at that. Can you see the edge right there? So they do look like wax. Now I'm going to see if we have any of the lesser expensive poured, the ones that are wax over composition. So what they would do is take a composition doll, which we can talk about, which we will talk about what composition is, but they would take a composition doll and pour wax over it so that underneath it, it's not solid wax. It's like a covering, and it was a lesser expensive way to make wax dolls. So high-end early wax dolls are a wonderful thing to collect. Let's see what other ones that we have here. I don't want to mess up Christopher's gorgeous display. Let's see what this one is. This one is looking a little less expensive. And yeah, oh, that is a poured wax. So I don't know how Christopher had this, but yeah, so this one's solid wax too. The face threw me off a little bit from a distance, but she is solid wax as well. A lot of times with the ones that are the wax over the composition, sometimes it's just so thin that you can actually see the composition through the wax. When you can undress them and really look at them, again, they look like candles, but they are wonderful. They are really fun to collect, and you can definitely find them, and you have to be very careful with them. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here's a sister. This one, it is harder to tell, but when you pull it back right there, when you can see there is a composition body underneath there. This is called a shoulder head, and there is a very thin layer of wax. See if you can see it in the light. Paul, can they see that right there? The little differentiation right there where you can see the little wax line. Kind of hard to tell, but when you look real hard, especially there's a little hole in her head right there from probably trying to attach the wig. If you look inside that hole, which that's going to probably be hard to see, but you can tell that it's not solid wax. You can tell that there's some other material in there. And they have a distinctly different look. You can tell that they are, something else is underneath there. She's got a little nose rub, so if you look at the nose rub, underneath that, it's not more wax, that is composition, so it's been poured over. So this was probably a much lesser expensive way to create wax dolls at the time. Let's see what else we have. So we're lucky, we've got a lot of solid wax dolls here. This one's wonderful. So most of them are English, I'm gonna say, just as a generalization, but of course there are exceptions to everything, and you will find them made in all regions of the world. But that one's sweet. I really like her. That's solid wax. I'm not going to pull her out, but that's another solid wax one back there. So Paul, see if you can get it and see. So the next one we're going to learn about is called paper mache. Paper mache you're going to hear a lot about in your doll collecting journey. There are a lot of dolls that are made with paper mache, and they are very wonderful, and a lot of people love to collect them, and you can find them out and about, out in the wild, all different places, but we're going to look at a couple types of paper mache. So paper mache, have you heard of a piñata? If you've heard of a piñata, then that's the basic premise of paper mache and how they used to make things out of paper mache a lot of the same way, and but paper mache dolls are a lot harder. So let's look at, I'm gonna pull, here's a good one. Now don't ask me about the price on this. I am I am hoarding dolls here, and we are keeping them, and I love to have them. So I don't have a plan for this, but it's a great example of a paper mache head with some wonderful curls. Look at that. Isn't that great? So the paper mache heads were made by pressing wet paper mache into molds, which is the mold of the face and the mold of the bust that you can see. And then after they were dried, they were painted and varnished. And basic paper mache was made with shredded paper, glue, flour. Every company that made paper mache dolls had their own little mixture of their own little recipe for paper mache. So different companies did it different ways, but paper mache dolls are wonderful, and they are just such a fun doll to collect. Now, when you're looking at paper mache dolls, the rarer ones and also the more expensive ones, if you're looking around and you're trying to start a collection or you're at an estate sale or something, if they have things like these wonderful curls in the front, or the more ornate the hair bun is at the top, the better. Not the better, but the more rare that they are, and the more valuable they are in terms of if you're looking for cost or what it might be. Now, we have one of the best paper mache dolls I've ever seen, thanks to our mother, Rachel Hoffman, and she's right here. This one is absolutely incredible. She has what is referred to as an Apollo top knot hairstyle. This doll is magnificent. She is huge. She's had some paint touch-ups, but it just does not matter. This girl is amazing. So Paul, pull back a little bit so that they can see just how wonderfully big this doll is. This doll is one of the crowning jewels to my mother's collection. Again, there's a little bit of restoration, but who cares? She is paper mache underneath, so she was pressed and put together. Now, paper mache can break, it can crack, it can crumble, but it actually is pretty durable as well. And then they are painted, so the paint can crack and fall off. That's what probably happened with this girl, and she has been touched up and restored a little bit, but to find one in this size with this incredible hairdo is just such a treat. So if you have paper mache dolls, talk about them. I'd love to hear about them in the video. This one she has wooden hands. And she's definitely the best paper mache doll we have here. No, she's not for sale. Pretty much everything I'm showing you, the dolls that we showed you in the first clip that are in that case over there, those are all for sale, but for the most part, we're kind of creating a permanent museum here. A lot of things come in and then they just never leave. And I am very grateful to be doing this because it provides such an exquisite thing for me to share on the internet. And also when we have guests here, they get to see something just marvelous. So I love it. And I'm just really glad to be doing this and sharing it with you. If you're new and you're into the scary doll thing, you know, we get so annoyed with that, but I get it. I get where that comes from, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, even though I find it sort of annoying, sometimes some of the wax ones can feel a little scary. Case in point, this one. So she's sweet. She's a survivor. She's wonderful. But sometimes when they've like half melted or something, you know, they just need a little TLC. But this is a good example of wax over paper mache. So there's the paper mache underneath. You can see the paper mache that has been molded and pressed in there. to make her head, and then she has wax over top. See, the wax is kind of coming apart. You can see it on the top of the eyelids, but if you look really close at the eyes and just the overall finish, you can see where it's literally peeling off. That was wax over the paper mache. So we're jumping back, but I just found her in this little box. So this little box is actually a treasure trove that I found in the back. Again, you're probably wondering, what the heck is Rachel doing? I have a lot of things here that I'm going to get to someday when I can, you know, but it's nice to kind of dig them up and have some fun chatting about them with you right now. So, oh, here, this is why I pulled it out. I thought this was another great paper mache head. So you can see underneath, again, every factory had their own little mixture, but she has a wonderful hairstyle. These are old dolls, and when I'm talking old, we're talking the mid 1800s, even earlier for some of them. You can date a lot of them based on their hairstyles, and if you want to learn more about that, get a book on paper mache dolls. There's some incredible books out there, and they will literally have pictures of the paper mache dolls and tell you which era it was from. You can also look up old catalogs, auction catalogs. Those are wonderful references, and they're very easy to get. So you can find paper mache dolls in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Here's one that is in a bag because she is falling apart and needs to be repaired. But as you can see, she has some body repairs, but she has her original clothes, which is just wonderful. Such a treat. Here's another paper mache. She looks like she's had some repainting, but again, she's a pretty antique, a nice antique. Oh, here's another example of a wooden doll. So this is the wooden doll that we were talking about earlier. This one's just covered in dust. They're in the back, but here you can see the wooden. You can see the wood. Now, to determine if something's a wooden doll, do you have to take it apart and look underneath? No, but a lot of times when you do look underneath the shoulder plate, it helps you determine a lot. But that's a fun wooden doll. This is an example of the peddler doll that we showed you, but without her hat and clothes and everything else. So, oh, here's another paper mache. So this is like a little paper mache hoard that we have here. Now, it's not hoarding when it's dolls. That's something I need to just make sure that everybody knows. If it's dolls, you're fine. So don't worry about it if somebody says you're a hoarder. It's not hoarding if it's dolls. And yes, we have that made on a sticker. So anyway, this one has restoration, and when we say restoration, there's different levels of restoration, some good, some very bad. This one, it's not terrible, but it's not good. You can see that she's been repainted all over her neck and on the sides. I'd rather have a doll that, for the most part, is in the original condition with no paint on it at all, kind of like the Springfield dolls that we showed you earlier, than one that's just been like totally repainted. But you know, these are wonderful projects, and I can share them right now and teach you a little something on the video. There's all different makers and companies that made paper mache dolls. No, I'm not an expert in them. I usually have to look them up and do some research. I'm a little rusty in that department. I know some of them, like Voight, and that's all I can think of right now. So, but the research, and we have a big library of books. Books are doll books. You can get them very inexpensively, and that's how you can look stuff up. You know, we're looking at early paper mache dolls, but they made paper mache dolls for decades, long time. So you can find paper mache dolls all the way up until, gosh, I don't know, probably at least the 1920s or 1930s, and people made things out of everything. So now we're coming up to Bisque dolls, and Bisque dolls are one of the ones that I actually think can be kind of confusing, because porcelain is the overarching thing. That's what the dolls are made out of. But then you have Bisque and you have China, but it can be kind of confusing. So I'll just talk about it how I know it, and then I'll show you some examples here. Basically, the difference between a China and a Perian, which we'll talk about, and a Bisque doll is all in the type of slip that is used, which is the material that's actually poured into the molds. and the finish. It's really all about the finish and what's on the outside. So when we talk about bisque dolls, a really good example is this one right behind me. It's this beautiful smiling brew, and she is made out of bisque. So bisque is an unglazed tinted porcelain. And they were really popular in Germany and France from the mid-19th century, which is the mid-1800s, until the 20th century. And they were really well known for making very high quality fashion dolls, girl dolls, baby dolls, character dolls. The majority of our dolls in the shop, not the majority, but a huge part of them are all bisque dolls. So they were made in different ways. They were cast in molds. They're fired at very high temperatures, and then they're removed from the mold. They're cleaned, they're sanded, and they're painted all over to give them a beautiful skin color and skin finish and eyeshadow. When you're looking at bisque dolls, when they have, see if you look closely at this wonderful smiling brew, when you look at her details of her finish on her bisque, you can see that she has lip liner. She has nose accents. She has little accents in her eye corners. She has eyeshadow. She has cheek blush. All of these wonderful things make a difference in the quality of the doll and the rarity and just how much time and effort was taken to make the doll. Now, this particular doll has bisque arms, which are wonderful, and sometimes you find them that are just completely made of bisque, which are called all bisque dolls, but you can find the wonderful shading also on the bisque as well. So many of our dolls in the shop are made out of bisque, and then they're wonderful bisque dolls. But then when people say I have a porcelain doll, it's the same. It's the same thing. It just depends on the finish of the doll. So when we talk about China dolls, so let's go and look at a couple of China dolls. China dolls are made out of bisque, which is a type of porcelain, but it's all in the finish. So they're glazed and then fired again. This is one of my favorites. This doll is made by a company called KPM, and she is a wonderful example of a China doll. She has a fabulous early hairstyle, 1840s, 1850s. These are really rare. Not too many of these dolls were made, but there's a distinctive difference between a China head doll that has this wonderful glaze and sheen that you can see. You can see the glaze, you can see it, the luminosity, you can see it, and a bisque doll that does not have that same finish. So you can have porcelains in all different colors, and sometimes they would pour them in different colors, but a lot of times they were a white color, and then they would, or a skin color, or like a light pink color, and then they would paint on the characteristics. So we have so many bisque dolls in this case, but Paul, you can kind of get up and see this is a portrait Jumeau right there, and she is a bisque doll. This is one of my favorite character dolls right here that we have. Wonderful bisque. So many bisque dolls. And then when we have, there's a lot of examples of China dolls, but here's a little bit more common of an example of a China doll. Still super sweet, but again, look at the glaze. Look at the final glaze. Okay, what we call bisque dolls don't have that glaze, and that's why we call them China dolls. Paul's doing a good job filming, but I wanted to show you one more, and those are Perian dolls. So that's where it can kind of get confusing, I feel like, but Perian dolls look like this. They're a lot whiter. They have this matte finish to them, and when I say matte, think about like makeup. It's not glossy, it's not like the China glaze, so it's sort of like a China doll but without the glaze, and it has this finish that is a white finish. So they are painted the same way bisque dolls are, but they look a lot like this. So they were mainly produced in Germany, and so when you're thinking about dolls and you're talking about dolls, you're basically going to say bisque, China, and Perian. And there's an example of a Perian doll. So the material of a doll is so important about the doll that sometimes we just refer to the actual doll as a cloth doll, a bisque doll, a China doll, a Perian doll, a wood doll, a paper mache doll. Of course, there are different makers and different companies that made those dolls, so then you can say it is a French Jameau Bisque doll. But what they are made out of is a biggie, and it's the first step into drilling it down on what you have and what you're doing. The next type of material that is very, very popular amongst dolls, they were made for a huge spectrum. So we can't just say they were typically made during this time period. Cloth dolls were made for a very long time. They're still made, but there are all different brands and companies that made cloth dolls of all different types and materials and ways they did it. Cloth dolls happen to be some of my favorite dolls because a lot of them very, very early on were handmade, and cloth dolls are a material that I find is an easier way to make dolls. Making a bisque doll is a major process. You need kilns, you need to fire it 15 times and do all kinds of stuff and paint it and be a skilled artist to make one that is considered like a high quality bisque doll. But with cloth dolls, and especially what are called cottage dolls, you can really get started, and I have always loved cloth dolls. So this is our memorial to Jonathan Green, and you can see a wide variety of cloth dolls. Now, of course, if you know me, you know I love Raggedy Ann and Andy. So this is a handmade Raggedy Andy. He's cloth. These are all wonderful cloth dolls. Now, different companies use all different types of materials for cloth dolls. Katie Cruza, okay? They stuff the dolls and they have a face mold and then they're painted on top. So there's all different ways that cloth dolls were made. And then also you can think about the material in terms of it just doesn't have to look like the cloth that's on like a Raggedy Ann. A cloth doll is still considered a cloth doll if it's made of felt. So the Steiff dolls, the Steiff company that's famous for making teddy bears, they made what are considered cloth dolls. You could call it like a felt doll, but that's still a type of cloth. It's still a cloth material. So let's just meander. We're gonna look at some different cloth dolls. So it's raining, the lights are off, but I know you'll be able to see these and it's totally fine. If you're new here, you have to see them. If you're not new here, you know, they're my best buds. But these are my favorite Raggedy Ann cloth dolls in our shop. They are some oversized Raggedy's that are just wonderful. So cloth dolls, I mean, just look at them. They're exquisite. Here's an example of a modern cloth doll by a modern artist. This is by Diana Vining, and she made this adorable Dolly Dingle doll for me, and she is so cute, and that is hand painted by Diana Vining on the face. And you can just see her whimsical art and just how beautifully she made this doll. And this doll is just wonderful. It says, "My Christmas Doll." So Diana Vining did a wonderful job with this doll. I'm just seeing where it was signed, but cloth dolls are a big one in terms of doll collecting and determining what your doll is made out of, especially with antique and vintage dolls. So from about 1900 to, gosh, the 1930s, composition dolls were very, very, very popular. They were a material that was very durable. It was pretty much inexpensive to make, and they were all the rage there for a while. So composition dolls they sort of look like paper mache dolls, except they're a little bit more durable. The material, the mixture had a lot more added sawdust, so they're a lot harder and it's a different look. So we have some composition dolls. So many of the dolls that you find where people email me and they're like, "My grandma's doll, I have these dolls from the 20s and 30s, they're like all made out of composition." The baby dolls from American manufacturers for sure were largely made of composition and very popular. This is a good example of a composition doll. This doll we dropped and we broke, and I'm forgetting his name right now. I should have looked up before I pulled him up, but Stanley actually re-glued him and repainted him, and he is so sweet. If my friend Melissa Turner's watching, I know she's gonna know because she likes these dolls. But he has a composition head with a cloth body. This little cupie is made out of composition. And we'll show our Madame Alexanders too. Composition was very durable at the time, but if it gets it is prone to breaking and getting cracks on it, called crazing, which we'll show you some good examples of that in our Alexander case, actually. So come on this way. So the most exquisite composition dolls that we have in our shop are our mother's Lady of Fashion dolls by Madame Alexander. These are the creme de la creme, so beautiful and great examples of composition. These were made in the 1940s before they started making them in hard plastic. And I'm gonna go ahead and get behind the camera right here and show you some up close looks at these dolls. So when we look close, you can see this guy is actually doing really good. This is David Copperfield. He hardly has any crazing at all, but you can kind of see some of the crazing. Let me go over here to the Orchid Princess and get in close. When you look at her skin and you see all those little crack marks, that's what's called crazing in composition, and sometimes it lifts up and big chunks can fall off when you're looking at composition dolls. But these are absolutely wonderful. They are totally made of composition. Again, it's like a paper mache, but it's just a lot harder. Here's an example of what we call crazing. See if I can get in there, where it's lifting a little bit under her eyes. Do you see where the composition has cracked just a little bit and it's kind of lifting up right there? There's a lot of ways. I'm not going to do it to these dolls, and we've actually shown in some of our videos how to fill these, how to fill it and to repair that kind of thing. These are very exquisite examples of composition dolls, but a lot of the ones you're going to find, again, are going to be babies and little character dolls. The next type of antique doll and vintage doll is celluloid. Now, I just looked around the store and I actually didn't find any celluloid dolls. I don't typically purchase them, mainly because they are very, very, very fragile. They are flammable, they break easy. Celluloid dolls are a lot of fun, especially if you can find a great one. So I'm gonna put up some pictures from Theriault's, and thank you, Theriault's Auction House. I've been using their photos, basically, I think all their photos. In this video, they have great photos and lots of examples, so thank you again. But I'm gonna put up some examples from Theriault's. So as you look at these pictures from Theriault's, you can see some just beautiful examples of celluloid dolls. Now these are high-end, beautiful examples of the dolls. They have glass eyes. Now not all of them are high-end like this, but a lot of them were made in Bavaria, Germany, and they have a lot of character. They are fun dolls to collect, but I don't usually buy them just because I've had so many break. They are very fragile. So if you find a great celluloid doll in good condition, you have a treasure, and just be very careful with it. There are different qualities of celluloid, some that's thicker than others, some that it breaks so easily. So anyway, celluloid was basically used up until they started doing hard plastic. And then after hard plastic, celluloid pretty much wasn't used anymore, because hard plastic was the just far superior material because it didn't break as easy. So that leads us into our next material that we're going to talk about, and that's hard plastic. Hard plastic dolls. They are some of my favorites, and I think the brand that there are so many brands that had and made hard plastic dolls, especially in the 1950s, but of course my favorite brand is going to be Madame Alexander. We have our wonderful collection of hard plastic Madame Alexanders here. We'll get in and show you some of them, but you can see the hard plastic here, and look at the face. If you've seen or know much about vintage dolls, then you'll recognize hard plastic. But it was made for a relatively short period of time after World War II. By the 1950s, hard plastic had been kind of replaced by vinyl. But the hard plastic dolls are wonderful because it was a very durable material, but also they lasted. So a lot of the hard plastic dolls from the 1950s, 60s, we still have them, thankfully. Here's an example of one of the little minis, a little 8-inch doll. This is an Alexanderkins by Madame Alexander. Hard plastic is still used today, It's used on a ton of things, and it is used on dolls. And a lot of dolls that we find today are also sometimes a combination of hard plastic and vinyl. So Robert Tonner dolls, not all of them, but let's just say, for example, and we'll go up front and look at Elowen and Grace and some of our more modern dolls, but they have hard plastic bodies with a vinyl head. And then some of the Ruby Red Galleria dolls they're all vinyl. And so they're all different. There's all types and materials that are used in dolls of all kinds, but we're going general here because we're just kind of covering the basics. So again, I just adore our collection of hard plastic Madame Alexanders here. These dolls in the case right here that you're going to see, I mean, they really are. Our mom worked so hard to curate and to get these dolls. They really are the creme de la creme of vintage hard plastic dolls, and it is such a thrill to have them here. Now that one is not moving very easily, so we might have to look through glass, but that's okay. All right, so we're kind of looking through the glass here, but you can see the wonderful bride and groom. Yeah, that case is not moving, but we have our ballerina right here, and she's known as the Deborah ballerina. This is the lady with the rhinestone.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have blue Margot ballerina. That beeping you hear is our front door. We just got a delivery from UPS. Oh yes, we just got a delivery from UPS, but who is this one? That's Arlene doll with the red hair. Oh my gosh. And these dolls were hand painted faces on hard plastic. Not a whole lot is known about them, and they're very, very rare. So that's hard plastic in a nutshell. So I'm not covering, here, let me, there we go. I'm not covering everything by any means. This is just the basics, the overall kind of the biggies when we're talking about dolls and what they're made out of. And I'm supplementing with photos. We have tons of dolls here, but I hope this kind of content is helpful. I know a lot of you that are watching know this, but it's always good to have a refresher, and I hope I've said everything correctly. If I haven't, you can always go in the comments and I will appreciate hearing from you. But all right, we're gonna go up here, and Paul's hiding. He's a little shy, but he's gonna, here, Paul, you take the camera and we're gonna look at a couple more. All right, keep it steady. We're gonna look at a couple more modern dolls so that we can kind of talk about hard plastic and vinyl. So this is not a modern doll. This is a vintage Tony, but she's hard plastic everywhere. So we've got Tonys throughout the whole store. But Robert's dolls, at least our wonderful Elowens and our Grace dolls, are a hard plastic body, and then they're a vinyl head. Now the head, it has a different feel from hard plastic. It is hard, but it is still much softer than hard plastic. So even on these heads, when we go to pierce the ears, all I take is a thumbtack, like a thumbtack that you put into the wall, and I just shove it right in the ear, and I can get it straight through. If this was a hard plastic doll, you couldn't do that. You can't just do that. So it is a different material. It is hard. Some vinyls are actually kind of soft, like you can actually grab the face and squeeze it. Now, me saying that, now I'm thinking of rubber dolls. That's another one that we haven't talked about, is rubber dolls. Those ones were tough. Those ones, the vintage rubber dolls, they got real dried up and crackled over the years. Not a ton of those survived. They got real like dried and shriveled up. But rubber was a material that they made dolls out of. I'm going to put a couple photos on the screen of some rubber dolls. I don't know where I'm going to find them, probably Therialt's, because they have beautiful photos. And you can see some rubber dolls, but hard plastic, vinyl head. It can be confusing. I get confused. And the only reason why I'm doing this video is because the other day Christopher asked me all these questions and we went down a rabbit hole and we talked about it for an hour and a half, where I was just showing him all these different things, and I realized, hey, you know what? I actually kind of know a decent amount, because he had all these questions and I pretty much answered them all, unless I didn't know them and I just said I didn't know. But, and then I was like, man, we should have actually been filming that conversation. But, it was really nice for us to just learn, and you know, he's so eager to learn, and I know a lot of you out there are, and I am too. I try not to sit around and regret things, but I do regret not trying to learn more when I was younger, when I was here. I just wanted to do the internet and focus on our marketing, and if anything, sometimes I tried not to learn because I was just being a naughty kid, and I just didn't care for a long time because it was that thing my mom did. And so now I'm in it and wished I had learned a lot more, but I think I know a lot more than I give myself credit for sometimes, because I'll go some places and I'll do some things, and it's amazing how you can soak up knowledge because I'll just know something. Sometimes you don't have to like learn it from an index card and pass the test to know that you learned something. You can just absorb it by looking at the photos, by going to doll shows, by going to any type of museum that might have some dolls on display with information about them. And you can learn a lot. And being around people and doll clubs and collectors, and there's a ton of videos online. I love that we put out all kinds of different content, but there's a lot of amazing people out there that are doing it. And also, if you have something to share, I encourage you to do a video too. So I hope that you enjoyed this. If you enjoyed this type of content and this was interesting to you and you had fun with us, please drop me a comment and let me know. That kind of feedback really helps. If I get those comments and I get the feedback, especially on YouTube, then the algorithm will tell me that, hey, this was enjoyable and we liked that out there. So I hope it was. And let me know the next thing we should talk about. We'll probably talk about the types of heads. We'll probably talk about maybe some bodies. This is really good for me because when you don't start your engine for a while, sometimes you lose it. And it's no secret that I do a lot with modern doll collecting. And when I started in modern dolls, it was so confusing to me, and I'm still learning like crazy. But sometimes if you don't use it for a while, you do forget. So I'm glad to be revving my engine with you, and we're just learning right alongside each other. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Paul for filming. Thank you to our editor for editing, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.